Welcome to the Train of Thought podcast. My name is Logan DeCamp, and I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach.
And I'm Chloe DeCamp, and I'm a certified athletic trainer.
And we are sitting down here today because we want to help you learn and grow so you can continue to do without restriction as you age.
Be sure to listen till the end of the episode so that you can get information that you can apply to your life and follow us for more.
All right, we're live. You got allergies?
Maybe, I don't know.
It's that time of year. I feel like we kind of flew by spring
Not really.
as usual and then kind of flipped the switch. I mean, maybe we didn't, but it just kind of feels that way.
I feel like it was a long spring. It was good.
Yeah. Now it's just
too hot.
I'm just in that constant state where I just accept I'm just going to sweat all the time now because of how hot it is. So it's fun. Yeah. Anyways, on the topic of sweating, I mean, I feel like this is a really good topic to put together. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because a lot of our clients and just a lot of people I've talked to recently are chronically deficient in sodium, and it's causing, some a fatigue, cramps, not feeling strong in their workouts. And I feel like a lot of people still are misguided when it comes to sodium because it's just gotten a bad rep for so long. So today I just wanted to talk about how sodium is important, and we're going to kind of dive into why it's important, what it does for you, and why it got a bad rep. And then at the end, we'll talk about some ways that you can add some more sodium to your diet. So yeah, did you want to take the reins on what exactly sodium is?
Yeah, so sodium is a chemical element. It's found on the periodic table. And it just went all the way to the top of the notes. That's great.
Whoops.
It must be my allergies. Now I'm like, my nose is running.
Uh-oh.
So it's the sixth most abundant element on the Earth's crust and found in minerals, most commonly salt, which is sodium chloride.
Mm-hmm.
Sodium is an essential nutrient for our bodies. It helps with a ton of stuff. Like, it's incorporated in pretty much every bodily function, including regulating fluid balance, nerve and muscle function, blood pressure, which is kind of where it comes into play most, that everybody freaks out about, is the blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It helps a ton. Its major role is like within cellular processes, and I'm not going to go into it super crazy, but it flows across membranes that creates this potential. So it's just crazy how it works. I mean, our bodies are insane. And it helps with nutrient transport and regulating fluid balance. And so it doesn't act alone. So sodium, oh my gosh.
Apologize if there's some screaming kids in the background.
You've got to be kidding me.
We do live in a basement that there's 5 kids above us. So, well, I guess
5?
3. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
I must be raging today. Let me refocus here. So it moves across cell membranes. So if you think about cell membranes, they have these lipid layers on the outside and within the different organelles within that cell, right? And sodium in conjunction with potassium flow in and out across that membrane. If you think about a neuron that's involved in neural pathways, right? So our nerves, they make this kind of funky switch balance all along that nerve pathway, that neuron, to transmit electric signal. It's crazy. So it's a huge deal. Like, we can't move without sodium. We can't retain water without sodium, because the way that it kind of balances out is, a heavier concentration of things likes to follow where water is. And so if there's a higher concentration of sodium, blah, blah, blah. I won't get crazy into it.
Yeah.
Just, it's essential, right? And so, along with potassium, which doesn't get talked about too much, but we won't go into that because I don't know much in regards to that. But sodium is the big deal.
Right.
So salt specifically, because that's kind of the focus of how we get majority of our sodium. Once again, it's sodium chloride, which are two elements, right? Chemical elements, and then they combine and create salt. Salt's about 40% sodium and 60% chloride, roughly. In iodized table salt, which is the most common version, it also has iodine in it, and that was mainly because people had iodine deficiencies and issues there, so they started adding that to the salt. And so in iodized table salt, there's about 2,300 milligrams of sodium in 1 teaspoon.
Interesting.
So other salt types can vary. There's a ton of different types of salt. So kosher salt, pink Himalayan salt. Everybody loves the pink salt.
That's the famous one for bodybuilders, especially.
Pink salt actually has about 2,200 milligrams of sodium in 1 teaspoon.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that makes sense why it's so popular.
100 milligrams less than the iodized.
Interesting.
So it's kind of interesting. I mean, why does it keep doing that? It's essential for our body. And kind of going back to the blood pressure, that's why it kind of started getting talked about more. When we do have high blood pressure, I should have probably looked into it a little bit more, but essentially sodium being consumed at high amounts can really aggravate and increase that blood pressure.
Right.
So when it's a ton, and like if you already have issues with your blood pressure, then it's ideal to probably lower your amount of sodium. You still need to have a certain amount, right? Because of all of these processes, you still need to survive and still need that element, right? But the problem is when we run into people with high blood pressure and we want to lower that, because obviously higher levels of blood pressure isn't great for your body. It's working overtime on that. Not good for your heart. Doctors typically are saying, okay, let's find ways to lower it. And this one option is decreasing sodium intake. What we want to talk about today is specifically not necessarily those people where they have high blood pressure. Like, yes, go see your doctor, probably get on some meds, talk to them, listen to their recommendations. And we'll touch more on that for sure. But this is kind of more the everyday people who have been told time and time again that sodium's bad, bad, bad. And you want to limit as much as possible. And you can only have this much. Everything, there's balance in everything. You can have too much of something. You can have too little. So finding that sweet spot is always great. But
yeah, there's a lot more to sodium than I knew. It sounds like it's more it's complicated. I like to keep things as simple as possible. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I think what I really want to focus on today and why I wanted to put this together, because I know there might be some clients that are going to listen into this, are some people that are part of our community, is really, really focusing on how sodium is important for muscle and nerve function, how it helps us absorb nutrients and keeps us hydrated. By the way, I do have a stutter, so thanks for your patience. But just to add on to what you said as well too, if you are somebody who has hypertension, you have high blood pressure, maybe you are obese, then you probably likely have high blood pressure too. And you're consuming a diet and a lot of processed foods, you're already consuming a lot of sodium. So we're not necessarily talking to you. We're talking to the people who have lost some weight, or they are active, they're busy on the go, they're sweating a lot, and maybe you're not walking 8,000 to 10,000 steps, but if you're following a moderate workout regimen throughout the week and you are relatively healthy, then we are talking to you as well too. And before we dive into exactly how they get more sodium and why we need more sodium. I mean, you already kind of touched on why we need sodium. It's an important, it's a important electrolyte. And like I said, it helps with muscle and nerve function, absorb nutrients, and keeps us hydrated. But I've also seen recently, I've had like 3 to 4 people in the past 2 to 3 weeks that have come to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just tired all the time. I'm fatigued. I'm not strong in my workouts. I'm getting cramps. And simply just have them increase their sodium intake, and we're not even touching the calories, and we just automatically notice that they're feeling stronger in their workouts. They have more energy, their cramps are gone, and they overall just function and perform better just by increasing their sodium. Mm-hmm. Now, before I explain exactly how and why that is, but let's go into why sodium got a bad rep and why, it was wrong to begin with. And I do want to state, take this with a grain of salt, no pun intended, but this all comes from a really good article wrote by Rob Wolf, who is the owner of LMNT, which is a high sodium electrolyte drink mix. So again, this can be a little bit biased, but I'll attach the article in the show notes, and I believe it's a great read. I send it to all our clients on why the WHO report from the World Health Organization.
That's WHO, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. World Health Organization is.
Yeah. So
abbreviated to WHO, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware. Thank you.
Well, I know you are, but I'm saying the way
the
that
audience.
You said it.
Okay. Sorry if that wasn't clear. But yes, if you, throughout this podcast, you hear us talk about the WHO, that we're talking about the World Health Organization. So to kind of go off my notes here, so I'm not going to go through word for word what the article says. So please feel free to click the link in the show notes and read it. But here's a brief summary of what was in it. So the war with salt first started from the WHO, the World Health Organization, and they wrote a 99-page report claiming that sodium is responsible for 2 million deaths a year. And they also made claims that saying that no more than 2 grams per day of sodium will reduce blood pressure, improve heart health, and could save 7 million lives around the world by 2030. Now, LMNT, the article that they wrote, stated that the 2 grams of sodium per day is too low and is even considered dangerous for active people, causing words are hard today. Thanks for your patience, but causing headaches, muscle cramps, and brain fog. And when I say active, I'm talking about following a moderate workout regimen. So for those that were listening in at the beginning, like I'm talking to you, if you maybe work a sedentary job, but you follow just a moderate workout program throughout the week, you probably could benefit from some sodium in your day as well too.
Mm-hmm. And reminder that your diet also has to be pretty good.
Yes, correct. So thank you for that clarification as well.
Processed food heavily salts their foods. It's because of like preservation.
Hyperpalatable foods too, like it makes it more like you enjoy it more too.
Yes, and so it's tastier. Some salty things we like, but also just keep that in mind as well. It's not just your active lifestyle, but you also have to have these are for people who are eating pretty minimally processed, eating well, all that. So
correct. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. But so here are 4 problems with the WHO report stated in the article wrote by Rob Wolf, who is the owner of LMNT. So number 1 is central claims are not supported by peer-reviewed sources in the WHO report. And what peer-reviewed sources are means that other scientists come together to sign off on such findings in the report to help prevent the spread of false and fake data. So this means the data and claims made in the WHO report were funded by independent research organizations and not signed off by other scientists before completing the report. So that makes it a little bit, I guess, for lack of better words, shady.
Well, it's more just that I think with any type of research, we have to be careful, right?
Right.
You have to take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt because there's so much bias that comes into research, and most research is just very preliminary, and making sure that things are peer reviewed and proven time and time again is kind of like the whole point of like good research, right?
Yeah.
And so if things are kind of like taken out of context and we say, oh wow, just a couple of these articles are saying sodium's no bueno, like especially you're going to talk about it next, but specifically with certain types of groups that they're studying, right? Because we need to think about the population. So I think being aware of your sources is super important.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like when they make a massive claim and say everybody needs to follow this now, for just to be careful with those people that are suffering from these things like high blood pressure and things, and then passing away later from that, right? Like it's not great. So they just take these broad overarching statements and apply it to everybody when in fact it's more complex.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk more about that right now, right?
Yep, correct. And the reason why we're talking so much about the WHO report is because this is what like caused the war against salt. Is
they dictated, hey, this is the way that we're going to do things. They tell us how, like, give out these standards for our food consumption and other things, or disease and whatever, right? Like there's tons of things. Yes, they keep us pretty safe, which is great and awesome because there's a lot of things out there that we just don't know. But at the same time, we have to remember, okay,
right,
where is the standard coming from?
Right. So this is why we're talking about that and why this report was a little bit misguiding,
Totally.
and why you need more sodium. So that was number one. It was not peer reviewed by sources, which is a big red flag. Number two is the model from the WHO report was skewed towards those with high blood pressure. And to be more specific, not to get too scientific here, but 65 studies were exclusively what?
Nothing. Keep going.
65 studies were exclusively on
oh my gosh, I can't even say it.
Exclusively.
There you go.
We
yeah,
go.
You got it.
Words are hard to begin with. Well, look, 65 studies were exclusively on hypertensive. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's not
hypertensives. So people with high blood pressure.
Yeah, there we go. 65 studies were on people with high blood pressure. Yeah. 11 studies were on people with normal blood pressure, and 9 studies were with people that had high blood pressure and normal blood pressure. Why is this a problem? Since a big majority of the studies, 65 included in the WHO report, were from people that had high blood pressure, the data completely engulfed the data on normal blood pressure people, right? 65 versus 11 people with normal blood pressure, as you can imagine, that's a lot of data towards people that have high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. So the data on normal blood pressure showed sodium, let me go back for a second.
Yeah.
The data on people that had normal blood pressure showed sodium restriction had very little effect on blood pressure. But people with high blood pressure, they see a big drop in blood pressure with sodium restriction. That's important to note. So that's number 2. Mm-hmm. Again, we apologize for screaming kids. I don't know what's going on, but where you live in a basement.
Okay.
Yeah, we live in a basement underneath the family, and I guess it's Saturday. I don't know what's going on. Scream bloody murder, I guess. But anyways, continuing. Number 3.
Well, going back for just a second. Yeah. Once again, reminder, like, yes, if you do have high blood pressure and if you're in that high risk group, go to your doctor. Go figure it out. because that's probably not a good thing to have. Like if you have high blood pressure, that can mess things up and you won't feel good. And so making sure that your blood pressure is normal before taking any of this advice regarding increasing sodium. Because like you said, like just right there, it says normotensive, so normal blood pressure, showing restriction on sodium had little effect on blood pressure. Our blood pressure is the least of our worries in this scenario with people who are more active lifestyle versus, and then we can talk about on the flip side, increasing it probably has more benefit than negative. So
Correct.
Within reason, increasing within reason, because you don't want to go so crazy where now you got high blood pressure, now you got problems.
Which we'll talk about what is the proper amount here. So thanks for the clarification on that.
Yeah, you're good.
And then the third thing is sodium intake data is also unreliable in the WHO report. The article from LMNT claims that the WHO's report had a unreliable starting point. So how can you talk about reducing global sodium intake if you don't know for sure what is an accurate starting point for the sodium? So that was it. And then there's also some other things they mentioned in there that I'm not going to spend all this time on. Please feel free to click it in the show notes. But one other thing that the article stated before I kind of wrap this up and kind of go on to what really is the problem causing high blood pressure, not necessarily sodium, is one thing they stated in the article is that the anti-salt movement began when scientists injected sodium into mouse and saw an increase in blood pressure. But mouse blood pressure is very different than human blood pressure. That's why, like, when I see a lot of studies with like mouse, I'm very skeptical on what they're trying to portray to us because it's not the same as it's not the same as humans, which I know that mouse studies can give us some sort of idea.
Give us like an initial, like animal studying is just gonna give us like we may not die from taking this medicine or something, you know what I mean? This could say, we can possibly give this to humans. Like it's the only safe way. Still not great because you're testing on animals and that kind of sucks. Of testing things to move on to human trials. And I think it's such preliminary research that if you take it and say, well, they injected mice with it and they were fine. Okay, well, you're not a mouse. So let's see what it looks like on human studies. It's just the very initial beginning. It can take us for a baseline and where we can go, but don't base everything on that,
Yeah. So thanks for mentioning that as well. And that's just something that I also want to mention. Yeah. So at the end of the day, aside from all the data and everything we talked about, I want to leave you with this. The problem is not sodium directly. Like, it's the quality of the food. A diet high in processed food will be high in sodium, but it will also be high in sugar, inflammatory oils, and calories. One would argue that if you increase sugar, inflammatory oils, and calories, this leads to excess body fat. Excess body fat is more dangerous for high blood pressure, diabetes, other chronic diseases, and even cancer. And to further kind of prove our point here, a 2014 meta-analysis, which I can link in the show notes if you want me to, it concluded that both low and high sodium both low and high. Let me go back for a second. My words are getting twisted. A 2014 meta-analysis study concluded that both low and high sodium intakes were associated with an increase in mortality and an increase in cardiovascular disease when sodium intake was lower than 2.6 grams per day. So we're not arguing that there's not a limit on sodium. Of course, like if you have so much sodium, that's going to increase your risk of mortality. But what was more interesting here is that low sodium intake had an increase in cardiovascular disease when sodium intake was lower than 2.6 grams per day, which completely throws the WHO report out the window, because the WHO report said cap it at 2. This is saying no lower than 2.6 grams per day had an increase in cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is too low sodium a problem and an increase in cardiovascular disease? When you restrict sodium too low, your body enters sodium retention mode. This causes certain hormones like aldosterone, renin, and
angiotensin. I got you, babe. Don't worry. They're weird.
Do you want to just say that sentence for me?
Yeah.
When you restrict sodium too low, your body enters
into a sodium retention mode. This causes hormones such as aldosterone, renin, and angiotensin. See, I even had a hard time there for a second. To spike your kidneys to retain sodium. Those 3 act at the kidneys, those hormones, about how because the kidneys are wild the way that they work. Not going to get into that, but it's very cool. It's a lot about balance of those electrolytes and other minerals and water. That's how the kidneys are, why they're so related to this whole sodium intake and all of that. It's fascinating. So like when you go too low, those certain hormones spike so that, okay, we need to hold on to our sodium because we may not have more.
Exactly. And that's a problem because these hormones also raise your blood pressure. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have enough sodium, your body's going to find a way to increase your blood pressure regardless, right? So what is the recommended amount? Well, you go on Google, you'll find an argument that says this and this and this and this. Hey, Logan from the future here. I hope you are enjoying the episode on why you need sodium and why the WHO report got it wrong. But real quick, before we continue with the rest of the episode, I just want to be really clear so you know and understand. We got a little confused, mainly I, in regards to 1,000 milligram is 1 gram. So when you hear me say 3,000 grams, I meant to say 3,000 milligrams, and I want to make sure there's no confusion. So 3,000 to the upper limit, 6,000 milligrams, 3 to 6 grams. All right, let's continue on with the rest of the episode, and I hope you enjoy. This may be biased. This is just what I've seen being able to work with people these past 5 years. What I've seen on average for our clients that work a desk job and following a moderate workout regimen throughout the week and are getting about 8 to 10,000 steps, maybe less, is about 3 to 4,000 grams a day. Yeah, around there. Now, if you're somebody like me who is getting ready to prep for a marathon, you're also running, I might be more...
Or is a very high chance of cramping.
Yeah,
which is another whole thing. We don't know if cramps are fully related to salt intake and all of that. But it can play a role, obviously, because our muscle use. Anyways, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
For those type of people,
so
might need more.
The upper limit, based on what I've researched and what, again, this may be biased, but this just comes from my own knowledge and research, is about 6,000 grams a day. That's like the upper limit if you're like a high performing athlete. So for me, I might consume like 5 to 6,000 grams a day. Yeah. But for on average, get 3 to 4,000 grams a day, and I guarantee you're going to notice a difference in your workouts, your energy, and just how you feel throughout the day. So I thought it would maybe help if we end, and it's not in the notes, but we did have a question in the Facebook group of like, how do you get more salt? I think you touched on that in the beginning of pink Himalayan salt as an easy way because it's super high in sodium. You can just
there's a whole list of all the salts. Compared to the iodized salt, which is like the most common one. Yeah. Granted, that has iodine in it, so you can even go with a different version. Most salts, based on the article I looked at, was anywhere from that higher amount of 2,300 down to like 1,500-ish, somewhere around there per teaspoon. And so, I mean, teaspoons are tiny, right? Like, we're not talking like pound a crap ton of salt everything in your food, go nuts, just crank that.
No, we're just saying salt your
There's
foods
a
a little bit
certain
throughout the
amount.
day.
Yeah, you don't have to go insane on this to be like, oh, I need to increase my salt. Small amount. Pink Himalayan salt, delicious. Flaky sea salt, delicious. There's also like a Redmond's sea salt or something. If you like salt, just go for it.
Yeah.
Not a huge difference in terms of like how much sodium's in it.
Yeah, and one thing to also note is electrolyte drink mixes are typically not high in sodium just because we've been misguided for so long. So if you're like, well, I get my what's the famous one people do for liquid IV? Liquid IV, I don't even think has 5.
Anything.
Yeah, there's like maybe 200 milligrams of sodium. So the only one, again, this may be biased, but the only one I've seen that's done it right is LMNT, because they have 1,000 milligrams of sodium per packet. Like, and that's how it should be done. Most drink mixes, most electrolyte packets you get do not have enough sodium. So just keep an eye on that. Like, if you're somebody like, well, I'm doing my liquid IV, you're probably not getting enough sodium.
You might
add some salt to it.
You're probably going to need to add some. And that's where, yes, they're yummy and good, delicious, whatever. But are they actually going to help you stay hydrated if they don't have the correct balance of electrolytes?
Yeah, which is the whole thing.
And I understand that most companies are going to have to follow whatever these standards are, because the WHO, World Health, influences the FDA, and then you have to follow their standards for putting out your electrolyte mix. And if you're opening it to the whole general public, and they created this standard for the general public, you're probably going to have to say, we're going to stay under this amount. Because if you put out something that's going to be higher than the amount that they say, and every random average Joe that has very little exercise, probably high processed diet, and then they say, yummy drink mix, let me add that because it looks healthy. Well, now you're putting them at even a higher risk.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's why I see that's why they do things. But that's where having certain mixes like LMNT is highly marketed towards athletes and higher performing individuals.
Yeah.
So when you have a certain marketing technique towards that, that's different.
Yeah.
So just know that,
Yeah, I mean, context matters here. Like I was going to say, a good rule of thumb that I always recommend to our clients is, if you're not sweating a lot on a certain day, and you've been pretty sedentary and you're not working out, you probably don't need a lot of sodium. Yeah. But like this time of year, it's 90 degrees, it's hot. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly sweating this time of year. It feels like there's some clients that I train that work in like a shop and they're always moving and sweating. They need a lot of sodium. So again, don't want to go crazy. Again, 3,000 to 4,000 grams a day. Try that. Don't go more than 5 or 6. 6 is like, you probably don't even get close to that.
Are you saying grams or milligrams?
Grams. So don't go more than that, because that's what LMNT, I think grams and milligrams kind of correlate to the same.
Milligrams are smaller than grams, honey.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Milli is like small. That's why there's like a 2,300 milligrams in a teaspoon.
That makes sense. Well, I must have been.
Let me look at it. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Typically, what I encourage to our clients is 3,000 to 4,000 milligrams.
Yes, because it then translates toward. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. There you go. Milligrams. There you go.
So, if you listen so far, hopefully you can get that clarification. But
if you're doing like 3,000 grams, that's a lot of grams.
Yeah, but anyways, 3,000 to 4,000 milligrams is typically what I've seen, and on the upper limit, 6,000 milligrams. So, anyways, I hope that was clear. Comment down below if you have any questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next recording.
Cool.
All right, thank you. Bye.